Okay, welcome to class number 47 of Faith and Calm. And now that we're entering Adar, we're going to try and ramp it up with more simple, more joy, more happiness. I guess that would be my wife's topic. I'm still preparing for Purim, and so I'm going to ask everybody to pull out their Megillah and look at it for next week and prepare. I will too, and so that we'll have the story down. No, it's a homework assignment. We can read through it.
You do not have to.
Fine.
Nobody wants to go up Yaskol Shimon. They won't do the homework.
They won't do the homework? It's a good story. I can't know why you wouldn't read the story. It's just the
fascinating story. People lead busy lives. Please start.
We're doing remote learning.
Okay.
I agree with you. It's a wonderful story. I don't happen to have one.
Oh.
Where would we get one?
Online. There it's online.
If you look online, you certainly will find in
And
English.
it's
Yeah.
It's a fascinating story. I agree with you.
It's a great story. Okay, so what I'm going to talk about today is again the last week's parsha, which you might think is is a lot of legalisms, but I'll try and show you how it actually has a lot of lessons about our life and who we are, and important lessons about it. But it doesn't start out that way. It doesn't sound like it necessarily. It sounds like a lot of laws, which was what the title of the parsha is: Mishpatim, laws, rational laws, legal laws. Which, like for example, it talks about the four kinds of. It's called shomer in Hebrew. In English, I've seen it translated as bailiff, steward, custodian. In other words, if you have, let's say, if I have, I'm going overseas and I want to leave some stuff at your house, a couple of books, camera, a couple other kinds of things, then I can ask you, would you please watch this for me until I get back? And that would be called a shomer chinam. You're a unpaid guardian. That's one case. There's another case where the person is, I'm going to pay you to be the watchman. I don't expect you to do this for free. It's, it's a lot of, maybe diamonds or maybe something more expensive. And I expect you to spend more time caring for it. And I would expect, that you would watch it. So that's called the shomer sachar, the paid watchman. And then there's the third case, which is the case of, you're not doing this for me. You're doing it for you. You're renting it from me. You're renting my house while I'm away in Israel. Okay. So you're paying me, but you're supposed to watch it. It's my house, while I'm away. And then the fourth case is you're just borrowing. You're borrowing my house. You're borrowing my tool. You're borrowing something. And the law has four different levels of responsibility for these four different people. The person who is Devorah? Yeah.
I don't know.
I think it is. Is that Missouri? It's not.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh. Yep. Okay. So the shomer chinam, the unpaid watchman, he's pretty much not liable in any situation for anything, unless he deliberately or negligently acts with the item. He as long as it's if it's stolen from him or a hurricane happens or something else happens, then he's not liable. That's the law. And then the next case is the second case. He's the one who's paid. So he's also working for the owner, but he doesn't necessarily have to pay, because if there's a hurricane or somebody comes and breaks into the house and steals it, then he's not considered liable. The renter, he's not doing it for the owner; he's doing it for his own situation. But so he has even a higher degree of liability. He's liable even if it, he's supposed to be much more careful with the thing. So unless it's a complete things die, the animal dies by itself or something of that sort, then he's going to be liable. He's supposed to watch carefully. And the person who's borrowing is liable in every single situation, except for one, which is an obscure case. So the owner is working there with him at the same time. But in general, a borrower is always held liable no matter what happens. Now, so these, you might read this in the Chumash and you say, okay, yeah, it sort of makes sense. But what's it mean to me? What am I learning from this? What is this about life? So the famous commentator, the Rekanti, who was a Rishon and a Kabbalist, who was quoted many times in the Shnei Luchos Abris by Yeshua Horowitz, he explains and he says these four different people are actually four different ways that people relate to the world, how they respond, how they view their role in the world. The borrower is the guy who basically says, I don't have any responsibility to anything. This is for me. This world is for me. This pleasures are for me. The world is for me. The enjoyments are for me. And live now and be happy. And tomorrow you die. It's just I don't have to pay back anything. I have no higher purpose for what I'm doing in this world. I am here to survive and to satisfy my needs and my wants. Okay. That's one way of looking at the world. The other way is the renter says, oh, no, it's for me. I'm renting. It's all about me, but I realize I owe something a little bit to the owner of the world. God, I have to pay a little bit of dues, I have to pay, but it's for me. Basically, I rented it, it's my thing, and so forth. The person who's the shomer shachar, the watchman who's paid, says, no, it's not about me. It's your stuff. It's your stuff, God. Everything in the world is yours. It's yours. But, it's, I want a little payment myself. I expect for doing and serving you well to get something back from you. I'm not expecting to get this, to be, to do this just for fun. I expect you to take care of me because I'm working for you. And the Shomer Chidam says, it's the unpaid watchman says, it's all God's, it's all yours, everything is yours. Yeah, in truth, I probably need something to survive. I need things. I need to be paid, but that's not the reason that I'm working for you. I'm working for you because it's your life, your world, and I'm here to do what I need to do. The Shalah says a very interesting thing. He says the way that you shadow, the way you serve Hashem is the mirror he mirrors to you too. For the first case, the guy who's the borrower, he says, it's okay. You want to live that way? You want to live only for yourself and you don't think you owe me anything? That's fine. But you're liable in every single situation. And anything goes wrong, you took a responsibility for everything. So you will have to, if good or bad, what happens to you, you have no one to complain to but yourself, because you don't see anybody, you don't see any responsibility for anything but yourself. So God mirrors, he behaves with you the way you treat him. And if you happen to be either the renter or the paid watchman, then yeah, it's if it's an accident, you were lost, you didn't pay attention, whatever. It was not negligence, okay. But if it is negligence, you're being negligent with my material. So I can ask for repayment for that. And for the borrower, the guy who's doing it as a shomer chinam, the unpaid watchman, everything is forgiven because you're not looking at this as your responsibility. It's sort of like the story with a bird once that flew into the Russian museum and was flying around there, and they wanted to kill it. And he was trying to figure out the bird was trying to figure out how I'm going to save myself. So he went and he landed on the statue of the Tsar. And of course, they're not going to shoot the statue of the Tsar, because if he's connected to the statue of the Tsar, they're not going to hurt the statue. So when you're connected on that level with a God, and everything is his and so forth, and God forgives you for everything too. So this is the mirror that goes on in the world, and I think it's a good lesson. We have to understand how much our little deeds, what little things that we do, actually are very much connected to how things come back to us. The prophet Isaiah says that the definition of the Jew is Atam Eda. You are my witnesses. I said this last week a little bit, but he continues and he says, Num Hashem, because I am your God. What does it mean? I am your God because you are my witnesses. So the nature of a witness is that he stands is a testimony that there is a God. We are God's representatives in this world, and the way we behave, the little things that we do, is how God manifests himself in this world. We are his representatives. And therefore, when we serve him and we represent him the way we're supposed to, then there's godliness in the world. And when we're not, God says, it's like I'm not in the world anymore. And I'm very upset because I put you down in this world to be my representatives. I put you down to be who I am, not to represent me and to promulgate who I am in this world. And that's your mission in this world. And this is connected with an interesting, cute little story from the Baal Shem Tov, who explains it, I think, nicely. He says that there was once a very rich man who was pestering the Baal Shem Tov week after week, asking to see Eliyahu Hanavi, Elijah the prophet. He wanted to see him. And the Baal Shem Tov pushed him off and said, what do you need? It's okay. You're a good person as it is. You don't need to. No. He really wants to see. So fun time, the Baal Shem Tov says, I got an advice for you. You want to see Eliyahu Hanavi, Elijah the prophet? Here's what you should do. It's a couple days before Passover. Load up your wagon with all the goodies that you have. A lot of food for a week of work for food, everything that you like. Go take this wagon and go to this village, and there'll be a house there, or a town, and you'll find a poor person who lives in that town, and spend the first 2 days of Passover with him. So the rich man goes, loads up his wagon, goes to that town, finds the house. It's a dilapidated little house, broken windows, and he goes into the house and he says, could I please stay here for the first days of Passover? And the owner of the house says, you could, but it's not very reasonable because we really have nothing. We don't even have food for ourselves. I have 9 kids and a wife and very little room here. And it's not going to be very pleasant. And, you're obviously a well-dressed rich man. Maybe you find someplace else to go for Passover. He says, it's not a problem at all. Go unload my cart, my wagon. I got plenty of food for everybody. The 9 kids come out. They never saw so much food in their life. Matzahs and chicken and meat and potatoes and all this other stuff. And they're unloading the car and they're going, wow, 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 wow. And he stays there for 2 days. And they have a wonderful time. They're very simple people. They have very little. They sleep on sacks of straw, and then they're very honest and very well-meaning people and so forth. And they have a wonderful time all together, and they're very happy. But there's one problem: the rich man, he doesn't get to see Eliyahu Hanavi, Elijah the prophet. So he goes back after 2 days to the Baal Shem Tov and complains, and he said, I didn't see him. The Baal Shem Tov says, now go back again. Go to the same place, but don't go into the house. Wait outside. Don't show yourself. Don't tell them that you're around. Just hide out outside the house and wait a little bit, and then you'll see him. And he goes to the house, and he waits outside the house. And while he's listening, he the windows are broken, so he can hear what's going on in the house. He hears the father of the family talking to his wife. And he's saying to his wife, my whole life I thought I was a shlemazel. I always had bad luck. And who would have known, looks my luck is changing. Who would have thought that a rich man would just happen to be driving by and his wagon would break down and he would spend the Passover with us and we would have food for all of Pesach. And his wife looks at him and she says, you silly person, that wasn't a rich man. That was Eliyahu Hanavi. That was Elijah the prophet that came. The rich man hears this and he realizes this is the lesson. The lesson is you want to find Eliyahu Hanavi. You want to find God in this world. You just start doing good things. You do little things, you do little good things, you do some small items and so forth. And that all of a sudden changes this whole world. That makes a whole change in this world. And that's the story that we're saying. When you do little, we think that the things that we do, it doesn't really have a big impact. It doesn't really affect God. It doesn't have a lot of meaning and impact on God. It has a tremendous impact on God. I heard a story a little while ago. It's not this week's Parsha, but it really has changed a lot of the way that I try and behave. And I'm going to share it with you. It comes from the Shalach HaKodesh, and he says he takes 3 stories from the Torah, both from the written 5 books of Moses and from the prophets. And he says, there's a medrash about these stories, and we don't understand it properly. So the 3 stories that he talks about are, the first one was the story with Yosef being thrown in the pit. And I'll just briefly go over it. Remember, Yosef was thrown in the pit and his brothers were going to sell him and so forth. But Reuven, the oldest son, says, don't kill him, sell him. Okay. And because he was planning to come back and rescue his brother Yosef. When he came back, Yosef wasn't there. He was sold. And what happened, and Yosef was taken down to Egypt. Okay, that's the first story. The second story was Moses argued with God for maybe 7 days, saying, I don't want to go down and rescue the Jews. I don't want to go. I'm not going. Aaron, my brother, is better. And God finally tells him, Aaron will be happy for you. Don't think that you're stepping on your older brother's turf. And when Moses comes, Aaron hugs him and kisses him and is very happy to see him. Okay, and then the third story is much later in time. It's a story with Ruth and Boaz. Ruth was a Moabite princess, but she was very poor. Her husband died. She came to the land of Israel, and the Boaz was a judge of the Jewish people, and she was working in his fields. And at the end of the day, he saw what a refined, proper lady she was, and so he gave her a meal of parched grain, which was considered a delicacy in those days. Poor orphan, a poor widow girl who doesn't have any money. I'll give her some parched grain. She'll be very happy with it. It was considered a delicacy. The Medrash says in all 3 of these cases, if these people knew that these stories were going to be written in the Torah, they would have done better. Reuven would not just say, throw him in the pit and then try and sneak and save his brother later. He would have grabbed his brother and taken him home to his father. His father was suffering for 20 years. Of course he would have done. If he knew the impact of his thing, he would have done more. And it says Aaron would have done more than just kiss his brother. If he knew that his kiss was going to be written in the Torah, he would have greeted him with tambourines and with joy. And Boaz wouldn't have just given this poor girl a bunch of parched grain, but he would have fed her a beautiful meal, because it doesn't sound like he's doing something so great. So when we read the Medrash, the Sfas Emes says, we think, these guys were publicity hounds. If they knew that their works would be publicized more, then they would have done better. If I knew that my name was going to be in the not New York Times, some whatever news channel it was, and so forth, the next day I would have behaved a little bit better. He says, we're not paying attention to the meaning of the story. The impact of the story is as follows. God has a diary, and he writes down what every single Jew, each one of us is doing. And all the tiny little things that we do in the course of the day are potential opportunities that he's looking for to publicize for all of history in his Torah, to tell you how great the Jewish people are. So when we're just sitting there on an average Tuesday and we have an opportunity to do something nice to somebody else, to say something nice to somebody else, to do a nice act, a simple day-to-day act, a little prayer better, a little help another person, make a person smile, do something kind. We don't realize that, this is a potential opportunity that God is going to write it down in his book, and it's going to be a lesson for thousands of generations. We don't look at ourselves that way. That's the problem that we have. That's the problem that's why we don't, that's what we're saying. God is our shadow. Everything we do is in effect, is mirrored by God. And he's just looking to say, I put you down in this world and you have an opportunity to do something for me, and you can make my name publicized in the world. And I think that's a tremendous motivational point. And, whenever you're just feeling down about yourself and you think that you're a schmiggy and you think, everybody has those days where you're not very, you're not feeling so inspired and so upbeat about yourself, and maybe you have a long face. And everybody, has those days. And some people have those days day after day after day. And the answer is, you know what? It's time to be happy. It's time to be joyful. And it's time to be an inspiration, because we all know there are certain people that you can go to, and then 5 minutes they can make you feel terrible because they're depressed and they're cynical, and it's a noxious combination and so forth. And they just bring you down. And there's other people who, whenever you're around them, all of a sudden you just feel better and more inspired. And, you don't know why, and that's because I think that they have that certain halo around them, they always see, whatever situation I'm in, here's a possibility to actually cause some happiness for another person. Okay, I think I've used my time properly. And then now my wife is going to give us some better stories, more reasons to be joyful. And hopefully this will bring us into the mood of Purim. And then Purim, as you know, the whole theme of Purim is that the whole situation was turned from the terrible situation of annihilation and the Holocaust and every single Jewish boy, child, to completely the opposite in just a blink of an eye, because of one fantastic lady who I'm going to talk about next week, about Esther. And I think that we're going to, but you have to prepare for the holiday before the holiday. So again, I encourage you, pull out that Megillah, read it over, because it will certainly help improve what I have to say next week. Okay.
Did you make all the
Thank you.
Shalach Manos packages yourself?
Each year I do. I haven't started packing it up yet, but not going to be this many this year. This year going to be fewer, because I don't know who's going to take it, and it's Friday, and I have to get home before Shabbos, so we'll see how it works out. So, yeah, I bought the Hamantash, and I bought the candies. I bought yeah, I think I bought everything I need.
To put it all together? That's wonderful.
Yeah, I bought.
That-
Yeah, so
Well,
it's a whole tab production, and then you have to do it for all the neighbors too. So it's going to be it's a busy time.
And you get it from the neighbors as well,
Get it from
probably.
the neighbors too. Yeah.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Well, thank you so much. This was a great message, great class, and I found the book that Shalamis recommended last week, Say Thank You and Get Miracle, and See Miracles. And I asked them to order it at the Israel bookstore, so they have more copies of it
Oh,
if
very
anyone wants it.
good. Okay,
So,
good.
so maybe in addition to what you said, Yecheskel Shimon, if you don't have an opportunity to do a mitzvah during the day, you can at least be grateful for something or express it, right?
Mhm, mhm.
Find a poor
According to
person,
that
give them
book.
some money,
Good.
get drunk, have the Suda, and listen to the poor Megillah. We'll probably try and arrange that somehow. Okay.
Okay, good.
All right. Thank you, Yecheskel Shimon. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Yeah, I remember last year, that's how we can really mark the whole virus. The whole thing began around Purim last year. And I remember we had a Megillah reading in our house, and that was the last big meal we had in our house. And I don't know how many people we had for the meal, but we had a Megillah reading. And were people already wearing masks then? It was already, the consciousness was definitely already in the air. So anyway, welcome everybody. Thank you for coming. And sorry for the late notice today. I didn't get out the email until late, but thank you for coming anyway. And okay, so I begin every time with reminding us about four things. Number one, that we are in a very special time. This is not an ordinary year. This is not an ordinary time. And the Rebbe told us in 1992 that the redemption of the Jewish people in the world has begun to unfold. And the second thing is that we ourselves, each one of us, has been in this world before. We've been in this world probably a few times. This might even be like the third time, or who knows how many times, about 3 times. And but we were selected to be here precisely. This is our last incarnation, and we were selected not only to, the reason a person comes back is to finish stuff that they didn't do in a previous lifetime, to do mitzvahs that they didn't do in a previous lifetime. But also, in this generation, we were chosen because we are the ones who are going to pull off the most remarkable evolution, revolution, whatever you want to call it, in human history, which is the unfolding of the redemption. And Hashem helps us with this. He helps us constantly. Hashem is always there to help. And we just have to talk to him. We just have to dive into him, pray to him, and talk to him. And he gave us amazing leaders, like, in the past, Moses, and in the present, the Rebbe. He gave us a guidebook called the Torah, and he gave us tools called mitzvahs. And mitzvahs are magic. Mitzvahs accomplish incredible things. So, and also what we're doing tonight actively forwards the process of redemption. The Rebbe said learning about the redemption is the fastest route to speeding it up, is the best route to speeding it up. So last week, I'd just like to give like a minute review of last week. So last week we spoke about a virus, and even though and what virus do we talk about? We didn't talk about corona. We talked about the virus that has been let loose in this world, particularly in the past year. It was developing over the years, but the virus of divisiveness. This year, it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous, the divisiveness. And I stayed 10,000 miles away from it. I don't talk to anybody about corona, virus, or vaccine, because as I said last week, they're all the same thing. It's all the same thing. And I saw that even in groups of gentle, well-behaved people can get snippy to each other when those topics are brought up. If you don't think like me, everybody thinks that they have the best understanding. They have information you don't have. They're a little shrewder, and it's a disaster. It's just a disaster. In every setting, there's divisiveness now. And so we talked about we mentioned that unity is critical. Unity is, and we mentioned the Purim story, that unity is what pulled off the Purim miracle. Because the Jews became united. They were not united until they were under the threat of Haman, and then they got united, and then Hashem was able to give them the miracle. And we learned that, peace between Jews is the biggest blessing. It's the biggest vessel for blessing. If you need something in your life, you need something new to come in your life, or you need something to be fixed in your life, the best container to hold blessings that God is going to send you is peace with other Jews, peace with yourself, and peace with other Jews. So, and we talked about a practical thing, like maybe if you have somebody in your life that you have a negative label for, and it's a Jewish person in particular, switch the label. Just think of a new, much more flattering label for them. And it will be the truth, because every person is such a complex, rich world. A negative label doesn't fit. Every person has such interesting things about them, and they're dealing with so much. So switch the label. And anyway, I said I was going to switch I have a label. I thought of somebody, and I didn't. I didn't interact with this person, so I have to interact with this person this week. Anyway, okay, so that was last week. And this week, I want to talk a little bit about the amazing month that we're in. We're in the Hebrew month of Adar. The Hebrew month of Adar usually the Jewish calendar and the Gregorian calendar, the secular calendar, dates change. They don't always correspond exactly each year. Adar usually falls around the month of March. This year, everything is early, so it's already now. It's it's February 15th, and we are already on the. Today was the Shabbos was the first, Sunday was the second. Today is the third day of Adar, and I don't know if you know it or not, but in Adar, the mazel of a Jew, the luck of a Jew, luck is a poor translation, but the mazel of a Jew is the best it is all year long, to the extent that the Torah tells us that if you have a court case, postpone it for Adar because it's the best possible month for a Jew. Our mazel is incomparable to any other month. If people have medical procedures, they also postpone it until Adar. It's it's considered a very lucky month for us. So why is it a lucky month for us? It's because of I think Hashem made it a lucky month, but it's also what we did in Purim. In Purim, we switched our allegiance from Achashverosh, the powers that be, back to God. We said, we're not relying on Achashverosh. From now on, we're relying on you. And we united. We were not united. We were scattered. We were, we had divisions. We totally united, each Jew with each other. And and the third thing is that we followed what Hashem wanted and what the leader of the generation told us to do. We followed it with, the Hebrew word is Mesiras Nefesh, self-sacrifice. I don't know if you know, but the entire Jewish people we were under the threat of annihilation. Haman in Hebrew, picked the date of the 13th of the Hebrew month of Adar. He threw lots. He said, "That's the day I'm gonna get rid of them all in one day." And all the Jews in the inhabited world at that time, Achashverosh was the king of 127 countries, the known world, and the decree went on all 127 countries. And Ahasuerus had a very incredible plan, a brilliant man, about how he could get rid of all the Jews in one fell swoop one day. And the Jews knew about this decree for many months, almost a full calendar year. They knew about it. And towards the beginning, they already did teshuvah, and each one of them stuck to Hashem the whole year, even though any single one of them could have gotten out of the decree so easily just by renouncing their Judaism. And not one Jew renounced their Judaism. They all davened to Hashem. They all listened to Mordechai, who was the leader of the generation, and none of them, they did not do what they did before, and Hashem saved us. So anyway, I want to tell you a little practical story. There's a story I heard last night. I participated in a Farbrengen, which is like a Hasidic gathering, thank God for Zoom, from New York, a bunch of ladies, and it's anyway, so there were two speakers there, Saratova Best and Gitti Stolik, and I heard this nice story. There's a rabbi I know and I've listened to many times. His name is Tzvi Hamnik. And Tzvi Hamnik's father, which I already know, is Tzvi Hamnik's father. Like many Jews, he worked as a therapist, right? And Amy and I used to belong to a women's group, and I used to laugh, because in this women's group, when I first joined it, there were maybe a dozen women, and probably 10 of them were therapists. It's just so funny. Jews are therapists. They love being therapists. So anyway, he worked as a therapist, and for some reason, he had to, to get to the place where he needed to work. He needed to bring his car. He couldn't take public transportation, and there was no convenient parking at all. And he kept getting parking tickets. He got so many parking tickets, it wasn't funny, but he had no choice. He had to do it. He had to take the car. He had to be there. And so he amassed possibly thousands of dollars worth of tickets. And of course, he got a summons, right? He got a summons to pay them and to appear in court. And he decided that he's gonna appear in court, but he's gonna push it off until Adar. So because it says to push off court cases till Adar. So they would send him a date in the mail, and he would say, "No, it's not convenient for me." They'd send him another date. "It's not convenient for me." Another date, "Not convenient, not convenient, not convenient," until finally they got to Adar, and they sent him a date that corresponded to a day in Adar, and he says, "This one I'm taking." He shows up at the courthouse, and he sees that the judge has an Irish sounding name, and he's extremely stern looking, and all the people that appear before the judge, before Dr. Homnick, they all, he threw the book at them. He gave them the maximum penalty. Every single person who came up to him was getting maximum penalty. And Dr. Hominick was, okay, this is what's happening today. Anyway, finally, it was his turn. He goes in front of the judge, and the judge looks at him. Before he asks him anything else, he looks at him and he said, "Are you a religious Jew?" Because he, Orthodox Jews look like my husband. They look a little bit different, some of them. And he said, "Yes." And the judge said, "How many children do you have?" And Dr. Hominick said, 9. And the judge said, "That's great. That's wonderful. Wow, that's just great." It turns out that he was a religious Catholic, and he believed in big families. And they started talking. He started talking to him a lot about the virtue of family life. They had a big conversation. Finally, at the end of the conversation, the judge comes back to his senses and he says, "Oh, what are you here for?" And Dr. Hominick said, "Parking tickets." And the judge said, "Forget him." And that was it. And he was
Lovely.
forgiven. That was the mazel of it didn't look like mazel would help him, because the judge was throwing the book at everybody, but mazel helped him. So the other thing is that in Adar, don't be fooled by appearances. History can change in a moment. Things can change in a moment. Haman, he had such a hatred for Jews, and Hashem saw to it that he was elevated and elevated and elevated until he was the prime minister. He was the second in command to Achashverosh. He was invincible. Everybody had to. Achashverosh let him have complete power. Everybody had to bow down to him. It looked, and when Haman came out with his decree against the Jews, it was hopeless, because Haman was like this with the king. It was hopeless, absolutely hopeless. But one night, Hashem can change anything in a second. One night, Achashverosh has bad dreams. He wakes up and he's thinking, nobody's my friend. Nobody's my real friend. Nobody's my real friend. And he had his servants look in the history book and say, read me some history. Read me something that happened in the past. He's thinking, maybe I'll find a friend. I don't think anybody's my friend, really. He was paranoid, yeah? Like many leaders, he was paranoid. And the book falls open to a story that had happened earlier about how Mordechai the Jew told the powers that be that there are people that are plotting against the king's life. It was investigated. It was found to be true, and those people were hung, and the king's life was saved. And that was before the decree against the Jews. That was when the Jews were sitting pretty. And the king said, the king figured to himself, wow, Mordecai's a true friend. He got nothing out of it. I didn't give him anything, and he had nothing to gain from it. He saved my life, and from that, the story started to Haman's luck started to peter out, and one thing after another happened, and you could see that Haman is going straight downhill. In fact, even his wife told him, the moment that you see that the Jews are beginning to win even slightly, your goose is cooked. And that's exactly what happened. So how do we take advantage of this tremendous power of Adar? How do we take advantage of it? And the first way is to be happy. It's not a joke. Being happy is one of the most holy things. Being happy is holy, and being unhappy is not considered holy. It's considered holy to be happy, and Jewish women are getting together in gatherings to increase their happiness. So what does the Rebbe say about happiness? First of all, it's that happiness is the most powerful force on earth. It's godly, and it can break through and shatter any barrier that exists. The Rebbe says that we should increase every single day of Adar. We should increase our happiness more than the day before. And not only that, we should do it with a novel. We should also diversify our happiness. If you were happy in this way, you were counting your blessings. The next day, count your blessings and dance. The next day after that, count your blessings, dance and sing. Do something novel each day to increase your blessing, increase your happiness. And one of the speakers that I heard last night, she's a friend of mine, Gitti Stolik. She was saying that, in everybody's life, we're not immune from it. In everybody's life, there is light and there is darkness in every single person's life. She compared it to a black and white cookie. There's the dark side and then there's the light side. And you have a choice which side you're going to concentrate on. And so some, if your mind starts going to the dark side, discipline yourself. Do something to bring it to the light side. Do whatever trick you can to bring yourself back to happiness. Thinking about what Haskell Shimon was saying, thinking about other people kindly, that makes a person happy, because inside you're proud of yourself. When you start thinking about other people nicely instead of like kvetching, it makes you happy, because you have a Jewish soul, and a Jewish soul wants to unite with others. So, and Hashem gave us a marvelous tool that we can only think about. A human being can only think about one thing at a time. So if you're thinking about something to be happy about, you cannot think about something to be sad about at the same time. It's an amazing tool that God gave us. Anyway, so and to reiterate, one of the most powerful things is to make other people happy. When you make other people happy, you get happy. We're going to talk more about happiness later in the month, because it's such an important topic. So meantime, I want to tell you, the second thing you can do in Adar, I think, is to believe in Hashem and to believe in miracles, because Purim was an utter miracle. It was woven into the fabric of nature, but it was an absolute miracle. And so it's a good thing to do, to believe in Hashem and to believe in miracles. I'm going to tell you a little story from my life, and it happened just this week. On Thursday, I realized, I have to look at the calendar. I realized, Shalom and Yehudis, you have 2 days off. And because we had in Shayla House, and the place I work, we have some days off, but it's a very parent-friendly school. So for December, we get, I think this year we got a bumper crop, but usually we get only 2 days off. And in, the rabbi who runs it tries to be as parent-friendly as possible. So on Sukkot, for example, we get off the holidays, but we don't get off the interim days. So when I have a day off and it's not a holiday, it's a big deal for me. It's a very big deal. So I was thinking, what would you like to do, Shalom Yehudis? And I knew there's a project that was near and dear to my heart. Not going to sound very exciting, but I have a lot of papers that are not filed or not organized. And I'll tell you that I'm, so how should I tell you this? Yeah, I'll just tell you. I definitely know that it's psychological. I have a particular problem with financial papers. And probably I have some organizational problems, because I remember as a kid, my parents called me the absent-minded professor. And when I would come home from college, my father would say, "Oh, the hurricane came home." But I'm not so bad. For example, my drawers are very neat, my closets are very neat, and my house is mostly neat. It's just one area. It's this area of financial papers. And I know the psychological reason. There's definitely a psychological reason, but they build up, and they build up. And not only do they build up, so not only do I feel, my parents called me the absent-minded professor and the hurricane. It must mean I'm not so good at this. And I have that side of me, but I also have a side of, my father taught me very clearly. He gave me certain traditions. You can't put all your money in one bank. You have to put it in several banks. And you must go through all those statements all the time, because I don't know if they still do it, but way back when, if people in a bank spotted that one account was not being monitored, they could pilfer money from it. So my father said, you must go through these things all the time, and you must diversify. You can't have it simple. You have to have money in different banks. It's not that I have a fortune in different banks. It's not even enough to in most of the banks, it's not even enough to I don't even have $10 in interest. I can't even, it doesn't even generate a whatever it is. It doesn't even generate a tax form. So, but even so, I have all these banks and I have all these statements and I have all these envelopes that pile up because part of me says, I can't do it. I can't do it. And the other part of me says, you must do it. You must do it. Which I don't know if you know psychology, but that's an awful combination when there's something you can't do, but another voice is saying, but you must do it. So anyway, I want to clarify at the beginning, my husband and I share all our money, thank God. I think that's the only way to go in a marriage. But nevertheless, I take care of certain bank accounts, the ones that I originated, and he takes care of his certain bank accounts. And neither one of us interferes with the other. The only interference that there is when we come to the holiday of Pesach. My husband is extraordinarily neat. He's just the neatest person I ever met in my life. And before Pesach, all areas of the house have to be completely down to ground zero. No, nothing on any counter, nothing on anything. And so I knew this year, oh Gewalt, Pesach is coming. I have my piles. What am I going to do? When am I going to get to them? I have so many things to do before Pesach. And then all of a sudden I said, wait a minute, Shalom Yehudis, you have Friday. Monday I already had plans for, but Friday you have Friday. And then I said to myself, fat chance, Shalom Yehudis, you're not going to do it Friday. You know, this was ready Thursday evening. This was Thursday evening, and I said, fat chance, you're not going to get to it. You promised Yeheskel Shimon, for some reason, for the first time in 26 years, Yeheskel Shimon said he wanted me to move some money in the banks. He never ever asked me for anything like that. You know, he does his stuff, I do my stuff, and we don't interfere with each other. And you know, in the last class, I talked about how inspired I was by the Rebbetzin, the Rebbe's wife, how she really gave her husband, how would you say it? She honored him. If he had a request, she did it. And so, having been inspired by the Rebbetzin, I said, Shalom Yehudis, I didn't want to do what Yeheskel Shimon wanted me to do. I didn't think it was a good idea. I didn't want to do it. But I said, Shalom Yehudis, it's not so big. You can do this. And just make him happy. He wants it. Just do it for him. Just do it. So I said, okay. He said, when can we do it? I said, Friday. So I thought, I'm never going to get to those papers because I promised Yeheskel Shimon I would go to the banks with him. Okay. So, but I wanted to get rid of those. I wanted to get rid of those things, not just for Yeheskel Shimon's sake, not just for Pesach's sake, but because in the past few months, it hurts me. I want to have the Rebbe says that a house should be orderly. It just, you know, it's a different life. The Rebbeim were very, very orderly, and all the Chabad rabbis, Rebbeim, and I want to live that way. It's so much better of a way to live. You know, clutter is a significant source of stress, and I can tell you truthfully, it really is. So so I wanted it for my sake. I just so wanted it. And then when I realized I'm not going to have a chance to do it Friday because we're going to run to the banks and it's a short Friday and it's Shabbos and I have to make so much food. I have to make a lot of different food for Shabbos because that's what I do. And I make, and you know, it's all from scratch. And I can make it a little simpler, but you know, you still have to have soup, fish, chicken, a vegetable, carbohydrate, cholent, salad, you know, all these different things. There's still a lot to do. And it's a short Friday. Shabbos comes in still in between 4 and 5 o'clock. So, so anyway, I thought, okay, not going to be Friday. What can I do? And Friday, so anyway, I was a little disappointed about that. And I was making dinner and I decided, you know, I'm going to listen to my telephone line, one of my Torah telephone lines that I like so much. There's one called Sichos in English, And I have to tell you that if any of you want the number, it's amazing. You can find out, you can learn so much about the Parsha, about Jewish history. It has so many selections. It's so rich. I love it. I've listened to the whole thing, probably. I've listened to almost every selection in every category. And it's a good thing to do when you're cooking in the kitchen. So anyway, I thought, I don't know what I want to listen to. I'll listen to songs, nigunim. I never listen to nigunim. I always listen to Torah classes, but for some reason I was in the mood. And they said, and they gave me a choice of different nigunim. And one of them said, Hatzileni, you want to listen to Hatzileni? I said, okay, fine, I'll listen to Hatzileni. I pressed the button, and all of a sudden I heard us, usually it's a Hasidic guy singing. I heard a voice of an elderly man, like somebody, he sounded like he was in his 80s singing. And I said, my gosh, that's the Rebbe singing. It's just him alone singing. And I was just a second, I was charmed. It was like, and it's such an interesting song, Hatzileni. It's based on a pasuk, based on a verse in the book of Vayishlach, the Parsha of Vayishlach, in which the Parsha of Vayishlach, in which the Parsha of Vayishlach, in which Yaakov is praying to God and saying, Hatzileni me'achi Esav, and so me'achi Esav, save me, Hashem, from my brother Esav, because Esav wanted to kill him, right? So so I liked the song. I liked it. And as I was listening to it, I suddenly remembered a story with the word Hatzileni. And I remembered, I don't have the story exactly, I'm sorry, but I remember that there was a Chassid who wasn't living near the Rebbe and couldn't communicate with the Rebbe for some reason. And he went through something very difficult. And afterwards he saw the Rebbe and he told him what he had gone through. And the Rebbe said, why didn't you just call out, Hatzileni Rebbe? I would have helped you. Just call out Hatzileni Rebbe. I would have helped you. So all of a sudden I thought, I'm doing it. The song was over. I went over to, I figured, I'm not like that chassid. Probably that chassid was like this with the Rebbe. He did everything the Rebbe wanted. I'm not such a big chassida, but I'm going to try it. And I went over to a big picture that I have of the Rebbe. And I said, Hatzileni Rebbe, save me from my piles. Save me from my piles. I don't like them anymore. I want to get rid of them. Help me. I try so hard. Every week I think I'm going to get to them and I don't get to them. My life is a very busy life. What can I do? So, anyway, okay, that was Thursday. Friday, I get up. I'm the dutiful wife. I'm going to do exactly what Yeskel Shimon wants. And let nobody make the mistake that religious women are simply yes women. Hasidic women are powerhouses, and they're not. It's exactly it's not exactly the opposite, but they are powerhouses. They're powers in their own right. But still, I decided I'm doing it. I'm doing the dutiful wife thing. And we went to the bank Friday morning, and banks. And as I knew would happen, it took a tremendously long time. Only 2 banks, took 2.5 hours. We both, we don't travel. We don't go anywhere without books to learn. So we used the time profitably while we were waiting, but it was 2.5 hours. And as we were coming home, Yaskel Shimon and I were commenting, can you believe it? 2 banks, 2 simple procedures, 2.5 hours. Anyway, all of a sudden it dawned on me, Shalom Yudis, you know what you just did? You just closed 2 of the 2 bank accounts that you just closed are the ones that generate the most envelopes. You don't have that money in those banks anymore. It's history. There's no use to go through those envelopes. It's history. And besides, the final amount was pretty much what I felt it should be. So I don't think anybody pilfered any money. You could go home and just rip up all those envelopes, that whole pile. You could just rip it up. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is the best vacation I ever had. It saved me like dozens of hours of time. I went home. I had the greatest morning. It was so marvelous. And only afterwards did I remember, Shalom Yehudas, just last night, you asked the Rebbe, Hatsuleni Rebbe, what? And I went over to the Rebbe's pictures. Wow, Rebbe, that was fast. Anyway, I want to say that during this special month, Hashem wants connection. Hashem always wants connection. And the Rebbe is a general soul. And we explained in previous sessions what that means. And the Rebbe also wants connection. And I have to tell you, I've told you this before, but I almost have come to the conclusion after all the letters that I myself have written to the Rebbe, and that I have helped other people to write to the Rebbe through, and place in Igros Kodesh. I'll explain some other time if somebody wants the whole process. I've seen so many miracles that I have almost come to the conclusion that in this generation, at this juncture in human history, Hashem gives people problems so that they will connect to the Rebbe. I believe that that's true. I honestly do. So anyway, we should connect to Hashem. We should connect to the Rebbe. We should should be happy. It's what we were created to do. And does somebody know? Can somebody say what candlelighting is? I forgot to look it up. This.
Isn't it, I'll look it up. Hold on.
Please. It's about 5 something probably, because it was 4:55 last week. So I like
4:59.
4:59. Thank you so much, Esther. Okay.
When is the daylight savings time switch though?
I don't know. I have to look it up, but it's not yet.
15
And
minutes
I
later.
yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Yael.
So anyway, I'm gonna turn off the recording, and then we can take. And thank you so much for coming. And anybody who has any questions can stay on.